This was supposed to be a monumental occasion. 4 sisters getting pregnant at the same time isn't something you see every day. It couldn't have been more thrilling for them to be scheduled to give birth only 3 months apart from one another. Suddenly, everything fell apart when one of them discovered something unusual about the father of her child. As a result of what she discovered, the 4 sisters were torn apart. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. When Maria, Sasha, Haley, and Kelly Scarcella found that they had all fallen pregnant, they were 28 years old. 4 Mississippi sisters were ecstatic at the news that they were all sharing a term. This had always been a dream of the Scarcella and the Hanna sisters. It was always their dream to have kids at the same time so they could raise them together as best friends and cousins. Their fate was unknown to them. A professional mountain climber fell deeply in love with Haley, the 3rd sister. True love was something neither she nor her sisters had ever before experienced. Over the past few months, their mom had constantly been nagging them about their love lives. According to her, they were almost 30 and had no husbands to bring home. While touring across Tibet on vacation, she met Chase and found his company to be wildly refreshing and exciting. Among those lean, professional mountain climbers was Chase, eager to stake a claim on one of Asia's most remote peaks. Haley met him by chance as he was traveling into the Himalayas, en route to his next great adventure. He intrigued her with his story and she became naturally drawn towards him. Her friendship with Chase grew rapidly over the days she traveled through Tibet. Her 3-week stay in Asia ended with her accompanying him high into the Himalayas, where his goal was achieved. He proposed to her at one of the highest summits in the world. Even though Haley was 27 at the time, the request made her feel like a teenager again. In the white snow, she shyly agreed. When in such a magical location, she could not refuse a special request. In the months that followed, Haley could not get enough of her newfound lover. As her vacation was over, she returned home to the all-too-familiar Natchez, Mississippi. Chase, a professional mountain climber, was only able to visit on a handful of occasions. It was Haley's first long-term relationship. Soon, everything would begin crumbling around her. It all began with that crippling loneliness we all suffer when our significant other lives thousands of miles away. Due to this, Haley gathered the courage to finally speak to Chase about it. As the conversation progressed, chaos ensued. Chase has never been home, Haley claimed with a heavy heart. His mind was always elsewhere whenever he visited. Conversely, Chase regarded himself as at the height of his career. His only wish was for her to have patience, but time waits for no man, and Haley had enough. Although he begged her not to go through with it, she broke up with Chase. It was agonizing yet necessary. Her 3 sisters each came to comfort her, taking a week from their various jobs to help her return to reality. None of them knew that Chase already had his eyes on each of them and was planning to turn their world upside down. Unknown to Haley, Chase had been thinking about taking her to the altar and building a life with her. He'd never met someone with as much soul as her. By the end, he'd fallen irrevocably in love with her and couldn't wait to retire from his career so he could give her everything she ever wanted. You can imagine his pain when she chose to end things with him. Haley had broken up with Chase because his career wouldn't allow him to be home with her. She lamented about having to raise their kids alone, worrying about a mountain crevice swallowing him whole or a boulder crushing him into a pulp. But things would only go downhill from here. What she didn't know and failed to hear when Chase explained was that he was in the last 3 years of his career. Why couldn't she be patient? She was about to learn the truth behind the mystery and danger he perpetuated. So a devastated Chase started plotting. He wanted to make Haley feel the pain he was feeling. He concocted a foolproof plan that would leave him with the last laugh. Haley was really going to know what it was like to be hurt by another. Haley had 3 sisters, each holding a very special place in her heart. If Chase wanted to get to her, to show her the pain he was going through, he would have to go to them. It wishes it would take some time to pull off his master plan. The months counted by slowly, and Haley was thawing back to life, but she was a month pregnant with him back on his mountain adventures. Before the dinner with their parents, Mariah called Haley to talk to her in private. She told her that she had important news that she wanted to share with her sister. When they got into the room alone, Mariah hugged her sister and started telling her what had happened. But when Haley heard what her sister was about to say, she couldn't believe the coincidence. And pregnant Maria exclaimed before telling her she was nervous about telling their father about it. But Haley was just staring in disbelief. "You'll never believe this," she said. "Well, I'm pregnant too," Haley told her sister. The two jumped for joy. It seemed that something had happened to the family, but who was responsible? Mariah. The first sister went first, announcing at the table that she was expecting. Was the news too much for their parents? Either way, honey, it wasn't over yet. The rest of the daughters had eerily similar news that they had to break to them. Their parents' eyes went wide, the entire table turning quiet. "I am too, Sasha," the second said. It seemed that they were over the moon with the discovery that their children were expecting. Their dad was about to speak when Kelly cut him short. "This might sound planned, but I am too." Everyone paused again. Leaning into his seat, he said, Girls, having a kid isn't something to joke about. Your mom and I want you to have great lives. Having children is one way to have a great life, actually, said Haley, her eyes scanning the table from one sister to the next. I am too. A month and her eyes grew wet in her eyes and her mom walked to her. You're serious, aren't you? Haley nodded. So are they, she said. She'd noticed how her sisters were clinging to each and every word coming out of their dad's mouth. When he realized they weren't joking, his face fell in disbelief. Haley's dad demanded to meet the men who had done this to his daughters. Haley's mom, on the other hand, went into panic mode. Although she was overjoyed at the prospect of welcoming 4 new grandkids to her family, she was scared because it was on such short notice. They'd wished to share this phase of their lives. Well, here they were, all together and willing to exchange advice or anything each other needed, and they couldn't do it without the help of their dear mother. With the help of their mom, they navigated the labyrinth that is pregnancy together, going through the motions as the months passed. It's in the months that Haley and her sisters were pregnant, Chase was away finalizing his career. There was pretty much radio silence other than the odd communication between the two. But she'd assured Haley he would be around when she gave birth to their son, saying no mountain would keep him away from such an event. Haley found his words to be sweet and encouraging, but that was until her sister Sasha shared what her boyfriend told her about their own baby's delivery date. It would have the entire household in doubt. Was this really the truth? Haley would be heartbroken at the revelation of the truth, but maybe that was the whole point behind everything. Sasha's boyfriend worked as an engineer in Germany. He told her he couldn't come any sooner because his work schedule wouldn't allow him. Pace promised to be by Sasha's side when she went into labor. It was an oddly similar story to the one that Haley had read, but was that just a coincidence? Kelly's boyfriend, by surprise, was also working outside the country. His mission had taken him deep into the Congo Basin, where he led a research team trying to uncover the secrets of some lost civilization. When she asked him whether or not he'd be around for their kid's birth, his words used the same mountain analogy. The sisters couldn't run fast enough to Mariah. They needed to know what they were dealing with. The Scarsella sisters huddled around their eldest, hoping whatever was happening was pure coincidence. Mariah's boyfriend lived and worked in the country, but he traveled to Brazil a few months ago for business purposes. Mariah called him immediately, asking the same questions Sasha, Haley, and Kelly asked their boyfriends. His answer would send the sisters into a panic. Can Mariah's boyfriend use this same mountain analogy? In fact, he referenced the Himalayas, saying he wanted to name their child after one of its peaks. Haley's heart broke, her eyes smarting as she realized what was happening. She scrambled for her phone, barely thinking straight. Did she and her sisters fall pregnant to the same man? She called Chase, but the call didn't go through. Each of her sisters tried their boyfriends, but got no response. Like the rest of her sisters, she spent the day trying to reach the father of her child. But for a week, his line was dead. Haley sat in guilt and self-loathing. But out of nowhere, a knock shook the front door. The Scarsella family had been stewing in fear and disgust for 168 hours before the knock came. Their mom walked to the door, still wondering why someone would be so evil as to do this to her angels. Haley was sulking in the living room when she heard a familiar voice outside. She lifted her head, her brows drawing close as she craned her neck. That was Chase. She sped for the door with her sisters after her. Each of them had called out a different name when they heard Chase's voice, but they all braked when they found 4 identical men standing tall before their mom. Ah yes, Haley's dad intoned from the window. It a glitch in the matrix.